I confessed to putting no more thought into the start of the show today and the song that greets us other than Googling an Election Day playlist. I don't know who came up with the playlist, but it was a playlist about the top 50 songs for democracy and voting. The times they are a-changin' from Bob Dylan was one option, but you see, I don't see any times changing around here. So I opted to not go for that. Get Up, Stand Up, Marley might not have been bad, but I chose instead. I also like the idea of Fortunate Son from CCR. But when Land of Confusion by Genesis was on the list of the top 50 songs for democracy and voting, I says to myself, Farwell, that's the song you start the show with today. And so we do on this Election Day, Thursday, the 27th of February. Welcome to the program. Thank you very much for stopping by. It really does mean a lot to us. We love that you take some time out of your day. It is the most valuable commodity that you have to spend it here with us, interact, engage in conversation, give some consideration to the issues in our community. It all matters an awful lot, and thank you for that, especially our 9 a.m.ers. Gosh darn it, do we like our 9 a.m.ers. I'm trying today, those of you who join us right at the beginning of the show, and I'm trying real hard, I am, to not be cynical about this. But in all honesty, could it have worked out any better for Doug Ford? If you are looking at this election through a cynical lens, which I've tried not to, look, Doug Ford is not the first leader who read the tea leaves, gazed into his political crystal ball, and decided, you know what, I have a better chance of winning if I call the election early. Like, could we maybe just have fixed dates? You may not love the U.S. election cycle, but you can pretty much count on it. It runs like clockwork. I wonder if I know we have quote-unquote fixed dates, but then we also provide the opportunity to leaders to do what Doug Ford has done this time around. Again, he's not the first. He will not be the last unless we change the system. But if you are looking at this election through a cynical lens, could it have worked out any better for Doug Ford? Federally, everybody is consumed with a liberal leadership race. Not much really going on politically to disrupt what he's trying to do provincially. So that's not a concern. He is well ahead of the next federal election, which is a good thing because with polls previously pointing to a Pierre Poilievre conservative victory, that would not have necessarily boded well for Doug Ford provincially, because it's very rare that the provincial government in Ontario is the same political stripe as the federal government in Ottawa. So even as the Conservatives were trending at the top of the polls federally, Doug Ford is way ahead of that. It's a very short election about very little, if anything. Is it about Donald Trump and his tariffs? Maybe. I don't know. Is this the right time to strike Donald Trump fear into the hearts of Ontarians and position yourself as the person who can save us from Donald Trump? I suppose that's been the point these last 5 weeks. But in the dead of a brutal winter where campaigning is incredibly difficult, you want to try to get a sign on a lawn, good luck. You want to put a sign in a snowbank, you might get lucky with that. And then on election day, because sadly, the cynic in me says they count on low turnout. And we get a winter weather advisory on the day of the election. Don't even get me started, though, on how 2 to 5 centimeters of snow somehow triggers an advisory these days. My goodness gracious. I know we're almost at the end of winter, but 2 to 5 centimeters should stop no one. And I encourage you to muster every ounce of spite you can find in your belly to get out there and vote in spite of the weather and in spite of the person who may have called this election for all of these very reasons, right? The best chance of winning with a short campaign in a brutal winter. And oh, look at this. On Election Day, we get some more snow. Of course we do. Just going to impact the polls, isn't it? Go out there and do your thing. I'm trying not to be a cynic.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
And let's go with 5 today. Who's up for 5? Your Farwell Show 5 on this Thursday morning. Number 1, slower streets have created slower drivers in Waterloo, and Mayor Dorothy McCabe, well, she's impressed.
Speeding, and that is remains one of the highest issues that people contact council and likely staff themselves about. So, and that's been consistent for years, decades probably, and we're starting to see the results. Since
speed limits were reduced to 40 kilometers per hour on more streets in Waterloo, drivers have slowed down by an average of 5 kilometers per hour. That's according to a new report from the city. Number 2, congratulations to the coldest night of the year walkers around this region. More than $525,000 has been raised from walks last weekend in Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo, Wilmot, and Elmira. More than 1,000 people took part to help raise that more than $500,000 for agencies that support the homeless, the hungry, and the poor. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Cambridge Memorial Hospital Foundation says its weekend gala, CMH Reveal, raised over $680,000 to fund new and replacement equipment for the hospital, including a new mammography machine. The event hosted more than 300 guests who bought tickets, made donations, and participated in a live auction. The foundation says the incredible support will directly benefit patients who need access to life-saving breast cancer screening services. Number 4, good thing that Donald Trump's tariff threat is about as clear as mud.
When does it go into effect?
April 2nd.
April 2nd for Canada, Mexico.
Correct. And for everything.
The big transaction is April 2nd, but the fentanyl-related things, they're working hard on the border. At the end of that 30 days, they have to prove to the president that they've satisfied him to that regard. If they have, then he'll give them a pause, or he won't.
This guy's classic. Every single day he's changing his mind.
That's hard to argue with that last part, isn't it? After announcing a date of April 2nd at his first cabinet meeting yesterday, Trump's Commerce Secretary said the fentanyl-related tariffs on Canada and Mexico take effect next Tuesday, March the 4th. The second set of tariffs are reciprocal tariffs on all of America's trading partners, which Trump said will go into effect on April the 2nd. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning today is Election Day in Ontario. It was a short campaign in the midst of a brutal winter, but we have heard the pitches from each party, and now it's our turn to do our part. Make sure you get out today to vote. Polls are open now, and they remain open until 9 tonight. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Election Day, the 27th of February, Thursday morning. Your morning wake-up calls are coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The moment we begin the show every day, our phone lines are open to you. This is an open forum for discussion every day, 9 until 1. 519-570-2545, star 570, or 1-800-570-5715. Let's go to the phones for your Thursday morning wake-up calls. Alan, good morning.
Good morning to you, too. I have 2 points.
Sure.
I wanted to phone yesterday, but I never got in. First of all, the election today. I want people to think, before they vote, what has Ford done in the 7 years that he's been premier? And if you take your thumb and your second finger and put them both together, that's what he's done. And he attacked the poor. He attacked the autism people. All he did was attack and take money away from people.
Well, he gave you a $200 check, though, about a month ago. Yeah,
a bribe so people will vote for him because he's such a real good person. Yeah, right. Anyways, so that's the one point. So they get out and vote, but remember, think of what Ford has done and what he's going to do if he gets elected again? Nothing. You'll just stand there and smile and say, look at me, I'm so great.
All right, Alan. So Alan's contention is that Doug Ford has done nothing for 7 years, and if you reelect him, he'll do nothing for the next 4 years following this election. Let's find out what is on Paul's mind this morning. Good morning, Paul.
Morning. How are you doing today?
You know what, Paul? I'm not going to tell a lie. I am in excruciating pain today. Thank you for asking, though.
That sucks.
It's not, I know, it's not the answer you wanted to hear, but you asked the question. I'll give you the answer.
Snow?
What's that?
Too much shoveling snow?
I haven't had to shovel snow for a few days, so I don't know what caused this, but oh my gosh, did I wake up in a tough state this morning.
Oh, I know that every morning. Hey, listen.
Yeah.
The polls are open.
Yes, they are.
For months, if not years, everybody's, all these third-party advertisers have been out there saying Ford has got to go, Ford has got to go. So he gave you the opportunity. If you didn't like what Ford was doing, get off your butts and get out there and vote. We have, what are we going to get? Probably maybe 40% of the people deciding who's going to run the next government for the next 4 years?
Yeah, that would be my guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as far as you said, fixed election dates. Fixed election dates, fine. We go back to strictly two parties, because as long as you've got a third party in there, you can end up with a minority government. If you only have two parties, then you don't have a minority government, and we can go with the fixed election dates. It works fine for municipal politics, but there is no party politics in that. It's each councillor has an individual opinion. But as long as we have party politics, if you want fixed election dates, we got to get rid of all the left-wingers, just lump them together.
No, wait. Why you want to get... See, now, Paul, that's not fair. You just want to get rid of the left-wingers. The left deserves a voice, too. Just as much as you're conservatives, we know that you are a true blue conservative, and that's fine. I don't know that necessarily the party system is to blame for our inability to settle on a fixed election date, but the system has been designed to give us exactly what we're getting. And that is the purpose of getting elected is to win the next election. That's just the way it seems, right? Once you're into office, your only goal, it's not really to do the job or to serve the people, it's to stay in office. That's your job. And I don't like the way that this is all kind of worked out. Maybe electoral reform is something that would be worth talking about here, changing the system from first past the post to a ranked ballot to proportional representation to something different. But Paul's underlying point is spot on. We got to get out there. Like, if we'll be lucky to get 40% today. And that is a shameful display on our part. JB, good morning.
You shouldn't have confessed so hard this morning. I was brushing my teeth, and then Land of Confusion started playing. I started howling. I had to stop for a minute.
Boy, there you go. So I chose the right one. Okay.
That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Happy day of, result that we're not actually going to be happy about. Talk to you later.
Thanks, JB. Depends on which team you're cheering for. And happy voting day. Make sure you get out there and vote. More calls right after this. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I made good use of that commercial break watching one of our regional councillors fall asleep during this week's council meeting. Maybe that has to be one of the criteria now for getting elected. Will you stay awake, sir or madam, for the meetings that you will endure as an elected representative? I mean, if you want to talk about lowering the bar, can you stay awake for the meetings? Is that too much to ask? Let's go back to the phones this election day morn. Terry, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I don't usually call this early in the morning, but
you sure don't. Okay, you have to.
I had to because of the caller previous to Paul. Dalton McGuinty, his government, I know someone else took over for him after he was done, but he brought in that health tax. Remember the...
do I remember?
Premium,
Terry, that's why he lost. So Justin Trudeau lost me promising electoral reform, and then he didn't do it. And Dalton McGuinty said, I will not raise your taxes. And his first damn day, he brought in that premium, the health premium.
That's right.
I'll never forget it.
and it's a little more than your thumb and finger together. But Doug Ford got rid of that ridiculous emissions test, which was a useless waste of time. And he got rid of the stickers for your license plate, which saved me almost $1,000 every year. So yeah, he's done more than the previous government. He did more in 7 years than the previous government did in 15. So just a little rebuttal for, I think his name was Alan. But I don't like to go after other callers, but I just want to.
Well, you don't have to make it personal. You can just say, "Hey, this is what you think." Well, you did. You just made it. You actually literally made it personal. You said, "I don't like going after people," but I think his name was Alan. Just make your point. Just make your point.
He did do a lot of things in 7 years.
Okay, there you go.
Government in 50. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Terry, thank you. See, we don't have. See how that works? You don't have to make it personal. Dave, I got a minute until news time.
Very quick. My interest is after the election, what will the leader of the Green Party do in regards to his two infamous candidates in regards to the nomination process for the next election?
It's a great question, Dave. And you know what? I'm going to give Catherine Fife in Waterloo a lot of credit, who joined the show yesterday, and she spoke very candidly, I felt, about what happens after this election between the NDP and the Greens, and maybe even the political left with the Liberals, because Bonnie Crombie, the Liberal leader, was appealing to NDP voters. We had two Greens in our community just basically switch teams and say, go orange instead of green. And Catherine Fife was very frank in saying serious and difficult conversations need to be had. And don't worry, Dave, I want to know too. Because if you're the leader of the Greens, you can't be happy about that. Maybe, just maybe, the Greens and their 2 seats can merge with another party. Let's stick with the theme, shall we? How do you go about winning an election? Note, I saved this conversation for today because the campaigning's now done. What could the leaders have done? Or maybe what did they do that might get them elected today? Conversation coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So you want to win an election, do you? There are, give or take, 500 people or so across this province wanting to do just that very thing today. 124 seats, 4 main political parties. I'm using some simplistic math here, but the idea is there are hundreds of people vying for your vote. And I would suspect that most of them coming into the vote today have some expectation of winning. So how do you go about doing that? Winning. Rob Danish is a professor in the Department of Communication Arts at the University of Waterloo. Joins us on the show this morning. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Exciting day. Always fun to have an election.
It really is, isn't it? I really get excited for days like this, despite our lack of participation of late. But that's an entirely different conversation, I suppose. I was really intrigued, and I deliberately waited until today to have the conversation about the piece you wrote that intrigued me about how to win. I mean, I didn't want to give anybody an advantage. Maybe perhaps you've had some conversations. But you have outlined some ways that candidates can best go about improving, let's say, their chances of success. What does a successful campaign look like from a candidate in your eyes, Rob?
I think one of the big things about a successful campaign is it has to have a story. It has to tell us a story of where we are right now and where we're going in the future. And people have to see themselves as part of that story. And I think, sadly, that's one of the things Doug Ford is a little better at than the other candidates and has been the last couple of elections, which is a good explanation for why he's been able to win. And then the other thing about the story is that stories can also tell us about our values, what we think is important, what we think is good, and what we think is bad. And elections are about making judgments, making value judgments. This is good. This is bad. I like this better than that. So you got to have a good story, and the story has to speak to the values of the people making the judgment.
One of the things we hear an awful lot about on this show is that folks don't understand where a particular candidate or party stands on a given issue. So shouldn't these campaigns be about telling us what policies you intend to bring forward and how they're going to help us?
Yes and no. So in my view, and a lot of the research I think suggests that policies aren't particularly persuasive. Policies are about governance. They're not about winning elections. And I think candidates get really excited about policies because they tend to be people who have worked in legislatures and care about these sorts of intricacies of governing. But only if the policy is part of a larger narrative will people be able to understand it or think about its larger meaning. So I'm often curious, like, what does this policy mean more broadly? Not what does the policy do? So if we think about what a policy does instead of what it means, we get in this kind of trap that tends to be not very effective during a campaign. That's more what we do when we actually practice governance.
You use as an example in your piece, Rob, Bonnie Crombie's promise to install barriers on subway platforms in Toronto. How is that a misstep, perhaps, on Bonnie Crombie's part?
So I think in every policy recommendation, there's a story implied. And in that case, the implied story is we're not safe, particularly in Toronto, is not a safe place. And the job of the government is to make it safer. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. Yes, I think governments do that. But that idea is actually a central part of conservative politics for a long time, that the government is like dad, and dad can protect you from bad things. And that is Doug Ford's message right now also. But Doug Ford's message is around the threat of U.S. tariffs and the threat that Donald Trump poses to Canada, period. Like, that's a much more compelling story about danger and safety. So I think Bonnie Crombie was sort of accepting the larger story and then just playing a kind of minor policy role in that larger story, which is the misstep.
One of the things we hear frequently during election campaigns is how this candidate or this party or that party is going to offer you some tax relief. And we hear it time and again. Is that an effective message during a campaign?
It's effective for conservatives. It's been effective for conservatives for many, many years. It's never been effective for liberals or left-leaning parties. So the word relief implies that taxes are a burden. And since around the late 1970s, early 1980s, right-leaning political parties across North America and Europe have conceptualized taxes as a burden. And so when a left-leaning party says, yes, we're for middle-class tax relief, they buy the assumption that a tax is a burden and a bad thing. So a few minutes ago, I told you, like, they're about what's good and bad, what we value, what we don't value. Well, tax is bad is one way of framing an election. And if the left-leaning parties assume the frame that taxes equals bad, they're sort of buying into the worldview of right-leaning parties, and I don't think that helps them. So that's a kind of misstep, too, because it's not a great way to talk about what we value.
So what then, Rob, makes a compelling story?
Yeah, I think, well, I also want to be clear. I think Ford is telling a fairly compelling story. Like, right now, I'm Canadian. I worry about the effect of tariffs. I worry about what's happening with the U.S., and I also see myself as Canadian as distinct from America. And part of the story is we're different. We're not Americans, and we don't want to be Americans. And I think right now, like, the story has to be fit to the moment. And, like, who are we going to be in the future? Are we going to continue to be Canadians? And what does that mean? How do we stand up for ourselves going into the future? That's got to be part of any political story. I think we'll see that in the upcoming federal election, which is bound to happen in a few months. So that's part of, I think there's other ways to tell interesting stories, like about the public good. Like, are we a community? How do we become a better community? How do we share our lives together? I heard very little of that kind of narrating who we are collectively from the Liberals, from Bonnie Crombie in this particular election, and I've heard more of it from Ford.
It is a really interesting time generally, and how we communicate and get those messages across matters so much. Really appreciate your insight on the show today, Rob. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Always happy to talk.
Take care. Bye-bye. Rob Danish is a professor in the Department of Communication Arts at the University of Waterloo. He has guested on the show before. I always enjoy the conversations because he makes me think about things in a different way. And in fairness, I will acknowledge that this particular argument resonated with me because in my line of work, And things have evolved over my time doing this work. But storytelling is at the core. We hear about it all the time from, and maybe that's wrong, but I find that it's pretty compelling. So it used to be, again, I'll just compare it to what we do here. It used to be this idea of, we have access to all of this information that 30 years ago when I started in radio, you didn't have access to. You needed to listen to get the latest information, entertainment update, the information, whatever it was. We had access to resources that you didn't because the internet wasn't a thing yet, right? That sort of idea. So it seemed compelling enough just to be able to tell you that Gene Hackman died, for example, which is, I really liked him, gosh darn it. 95 is a pretty good run. But that would be the sort of thing that we would just share with you because you wouldn't be able to get the information anywhere else. Well, now that you can, the story becomes about, my first date was at the French Connection, Gene Hackman's Oscar-winning movie. That, and then you tell the story around that, and it makes it that much more compelling than just delivering the information, if that makes sense. Rob Danish finishes his piece that caught my attention in this way. If you want to win an election, control the frame, talk about values more than policy, tell a compelling story, paint a bright future, Pierre Poilievre, I added that part, and find ways to repeat. Control the frame, talk about values more than policy, tell a compelling story, and paint a bright future. When it comes to casting your ballot, what do you look for? And I'm not asking for your why in this particular case. I get it, and many of us, and you're already engaged. I know you're voting today or have already voted. But a lot of us will say, well, because, our parents and grandparents fought for our rights to vote. I get your why, but I want to know what it is that motivates you to cast a ballot in a particular direction. Are you just a true blue party supporter? Do you look for the party leader? Do you look for the individual candidate? Is it something specific that they have to tell you, a story you want to hear from them? What is it that you look for in a candidate? What makes you cast your ballot in somebody's favor? Would love to hear that from you. Let's tell our own story this morning on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Only if the policy is part of a larger narrative will people be able to understand it or think about its larger meaning. So I'm often curious, what does this policy mean more broadly? Not what does the policy do? So if we think about what a policy does instead of what it means, we get in this kind of trap that tends to be not very effective during a campaign. That's more what we do when we actually practice governance.
Rob Danish is a professor of communication arts at the University of Waterloo. Joins us this morning to talk about how to win an election. And yes, of course, we waited until today to talk to Rob about his argument that it's persuasion, not policy. It's good storytelling and painting a picture of a bright future. We didn't want to give anybody an advantage, right? And I'm sure that the best campaigners have already learned this. But it makes me wonder what it is that motivates you to cast a ballot. Not necessarily why you vote and, because we literally fought for the freedom and the right to vote. But when it comes to voting, because I know you do, what is it that persuades you? 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Susan, good morning.
Good morning.
What makes you cast a ballot? What is it that persuades you?
Well, I want to tell you, my husband this morning came upstairs wearing an orange shirt, and I said, "This is for the vote, isn't it?" And he said, "Yeah, it is." He's voting party. And I said, "Look what I'm wearing." And I'm wearing a Wonder Woman scarf today. I'm voting for the person who happens to be orange as well in Waterloo. But she's done a fantastic job. And I think back to Elizabeth Whitmer also did a fantastic job in this area. Very different party. But for me, it comes down to someone that I think represents the riding and represents themselves with a lot of integrity and hard work.
boy, oh boy, did you ever sum it up well. And great memory on Liz Whitmer, who I agree was terrific. And isn't that interesting? A conservative under Liz Whitmer. And if I understood you correctly, Susan, you are saying that Catherine Fife is Wonder Woman.
I am.
Thanks for calling in today and sharing that. Appreciate it.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. So Susan goes for person. Susan's husband goes for party. And I'm always fascinated by this too. And I'll tell you what, I believe myself to be, and I mean, it's just me. We're not always the best judges of our own character, but I am fiercely loyal. Not politically. Politically, I'm not just going to vote for you because I voted for your color last time or I voted for your color before. I am with Susan on this, and I always want to hear the message from the candidate. And frankly, to go back to something that Rob Danish talked about from the University of Waterloo, our guest this morning, I want to hear them tell a bright and positive story. That's what I want. And if I can determine in the conversation that we have, should we be fortunate enough to have it while you're campaigning and canvassing in my neighborhood, I honestly want to know, because work ethic matters to me. I want to know you're going to show up, and I want to know you're going to put in the time for my community, because that's what you're asking to do, right? That's what I always look for. And so I'm pretty much politically agnostic. I am candidate focused when it comes to elections. Bob, what about you? What inspires you to vote?
Well, I've changed a bit as I got older.
I beg your pardon?
I've changed a bit as I got older.
You've changed a bit as you got older. You have been liberal, Bob, as long as I've known you. So are you saying that you used to vote conservative?
Yeah, I did. I told you that before, Mike.
You used to, but now you will only ever. For how long have you been voting liberal and liberal only?
Liberal only? About 15. Well, since Stephen Harper was in power, put it that way.
And I think he first came to power in 06, right?
Yep.
Maybe 04. 04? 04. 06. Whatever. I'm sorry. 06. 06 for Stephen Harper. So since 2006. So even after Justin Trudeau lied to you about electoral reform, you voted for his government again.
Yeah, because, here we go again. The Conservatives helped defeat that because Stephen Harper said he did not think it was a good idea because no party would get a majority government under that.
Well, the Conservatives didn't help defeat electoral reform.
Well, they wouldn't support it.
Well, but they didn't. They never even got a chance. The Liberals ran some sham of a public education campaign and decided themselves that they weren't going to do it.
You're rewriting history there, Mike.
I am not rewriting history, sir. That's exactly what happened. They did a little road show, and then they said, "Yeah, we're not doing this."
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason I vote for a party.
All right.
I gave you a bit of a hard time the other day. I'm sorry. I'd like to apologize.
No, listen, Bob, don't ever apologize for giving me a hard time. Truly. I understand that comes with the job. And frankly, once in a while, like, we're not always at our best, right? I appreciate your apology, though. That's really nice of you, but not necessary. George, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. I'm usually opposite of you. I usually vote a party line, as blue as the sky is blue. This time, I really like Uncle Rob. I really like Robert Dishman. I think he's smart. He's intuitive. He really digs in what he needs to do. I like to see him represent our area.
All right, George, appreciate that. I think that you're certainly onto something candidate-specific there. This is somebody that certainly gives a flying fidoo about the community, for sure. The banner he's running under is a tough one right now because, remember, not even official party status in the province right now. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It's a busy day, an election day. Andre is on the phone with us. I've got 30 seconds before news, Andre. They're all yours.
Wicked. I just want to say thank you for your show, Mike, because I'm confused. I've been asking a lot of people their version. They're confused. But listening to your show, with this snow on the sidewalk, I still have to get out there and vote because if I don't, then I won't be able to complain. I really love Catherine Fife yesterday, I think, from the NDP. Is it true?
It is true that she is from the NDP, yes.
I really love and express how she did it for the community. And I'm in the community, so that's all I'm going to look at.
All right, Andre. And make sure, yes, brave those snowy sidewalks. We only got a few centimeters. Everything's fine. Get out there. You don't need a voter registration card. Just take a piece of ID to your polling station. Polls open now, and they remain open until 9 tonight. And 570 News Radio will have all your results all through the evening on this election day in Ontario. This is the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So how do you like your tax hikes in Wilmot Township? I hope you like them big, like big. 18.22% big. That is the increase, translates to just over $200 for the average homeowner in Wilmot, thanks to the budget passed this week. It did not pass unanimously, however. Two councillors, Harveer Sidhu and Chris Wilkinson, voted against the budget and its 18.22% tax increase. And Ward 2 councillor Chris Wilkinson joins our show this morning to talk about it. So why don't we just start right there, Chris? Why was it that you voted against this particular budget?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mike, and have me on this morning. Well, in essence, you know what? I think the 18+% here is honestly just too high. You know, one of my main pillars has been fiscal responsibility, and while that could be interpreted in a lot of ways, I think at this time right now, when you sort of take stock of cost of living, you look at the threats of tariffs and potential impacts on the economy in this region and in our township, I just think it's too high, and it's simply unaffordable for many residents. And folks that are on fixed incomes or on limited budgets, I mean, they're really going to feel the impact here. And you know, to even add on to that, I was just reading an article last night talking about mortgage renewals, and I'm thinking of how much more difficult that's going to be for folks as they visit with their banks over the next 6 to 12 months. So I really do feel like affordability needed to be a bigger priority, and you know, maybe would have looked at taking a different approach. But yeah, I voted against the budget simply because I think we need to find different ways to deliver services without passing on the heavy burden on the taxpayers.
So how might we go about doing that? In the statement you released after the budget deliberations, you said you pushed for a more measured approach. What would that approach look like?
Yeah. So I think there's a few ways that we can do this. And one, you know, it's never too late. I mean, we're looking at the province right now, and I think there needs to be a funding change, first and foremost. There are a lot of issues and costs that have been downloaded onto municipalities, and I think that's driving some of these cost changes. But at the same time, I think deeper spending reviews and looking for future solutions. You know, there's really no secret in one way that this budget issue presented itself in Wilmot. It was a accumulation of a variety of missteps and decisions that were made over, we'll say, 20, 25 years. And as that snowball gets rolling, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes down the hill. So I think when I'm looking at, okay, that we had 20 years of history, it might take us 5 to 10 years to get out of this. And I think, you know, we could have looked at deeper spending reviews, which is identifying efficiencies, identifying areas of waste, identifying redundancies, and really taking a deep, hard look at our budget, and in particular our operational budget. And one of the exercises that I asked the staff to come back with was a 5% reduction in spending on each of their department operational budgets. That report was tabled at the beginning of the budget meeting on Monday, and I'll be honest, the task at hand, well, I'll put it this way, they failed to achieve their task at hand. And the resulting report, it gave us a few options that presented potential risks as to how we could save maybe up to 3%. And, you know, the options presented weren't necessarily great options and ones that we could jump on board with. And quite frankly, it just didn't produce enough. So I think the approach needs to change, and we really need to start budgeting for 2026 tomorrow. Like, that's begin the new budget season in Wilmot, as far as I'm concerned, because we need to ask the province for more funding, and we need to review our internal spending. And I really do firmly believe that for a lot of our municipalities in our region, and even our provincial and federal governments, we really need to get back to basics. We are taxed at an extremely high level in Canada, and it's a huge burden to put on the tax base and regular, everyday working folks. We need to get back to basics and make sure that government is providing the core essentials at a minimum level for absolutely everybody. And then once we've got that balanced and figured out, we can ask for a little bit more.
Sounds, Chris, like you are advocating for smaller government here, that there might be too much largesse or bloat in budgets across the board, municipal, provincial, federal.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly do believe that. And I think at the end of the day, we always say government's not business, but at the end of the day, it is business. The interesting piece, though, is that instead of selling a product to generate revenue, we're basically providing services. And the way that we generate revenue is we go out to the tax base. But we're really the only business where we can say, you know what, sales are down, revenue's down, let's just increase taxes. And I really do have a problem with that, because it becomes, in my opinion, too easy for elected officials or even the bureaucracy to turn around and say, okay, well, the easiest way to do this is we hire more people or we spend more money on this. And, we can just go back to the tax base to raise those funds. I think that practice really needs to come to an end. I understand there's really no other way for us to do it, but, we need to really take a strong look at the alternatives, and whether that's identifying user pay opportunities, revenue generating opportunities through rentals or programs that we could potentially attract to our facilities. And at the same time, again, looking inwards and saying, where are we spending too much money? What can we potentially look at moving on from or getting out of the business of? And I realize government does fill some gaps where private industry just simply won't. And we'll have to continue doing that. But that's the trade-off for paying those taxes. My concern is right now it's at a point where it's gotten to be too big and too much.
Chris Wilkinson is the Ward 2 councillor in Wilmot Township, joins us on the show this morning to talk about the budget just passed in Wilmot, 18.22%. I'm going to get Chris to hang on just during this quick commercial timeout, because we have to go a little bit further here. Something Chris talked about earlier struck me, because we know where this budget started. The draft proposal was almost 51%. So, yeah, you could say this is a good news story, coming from almost 51% down to 18%. But it seems to me, unless there's a new math I'm missing, that there's ground to be made up in Wilmot Township. So 18% this year. Do we expect another 18 in the years moving forward? We'll continue the conversation with Wilmot Township Councillor for Ward 2, Chris Wilkinson, here on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Wilmot Township Council passed its 2025 budget earlier this week at 18.22% by way of tax increase. That's more than $200 on the municipal tax bill for township residents. That's before you add on the regional portion of that tax bill and the school board levy as well. Councillor Chris Wilkinson represents Ward 2 in Wilmot and joins us on the show this morning. And Chris, you mentioned earlier that snowball rolling down the hill and getting larger and larger, and made reference, Chris, to thinking that maybe it takes 5 to 10 years to sort of sort out, if you will, the financial situation in Wilmot Township. And I'm curious about that piece as well, because when this conversation started in Wilmot, the tax increase proposed in the draft budget was almost 51%. Now we find ourselves north of 18% at 18.22. But I'm wondering if township residents need to expect another 18% next year, another 18% the year after that. Like, what does the short to medium term look like here in your mind?
That's a great question. And to be honest with you, I don't have the answer to that right now. I think it's fair to maybe suggest that, hey guys, we will be looking at increasing again, or we need to potentially balance our budget in different ways, and you could expect, I don't know, a larger than regular number. However, I don't necessarily think there's going to be an appetite for that as well, which is why I say there needs to be a little bit more balance. When I talk about starting to plan for the future, that's why I say budget for 2026 needs to start now. We need to start looking ahead and saying, truly, where are we going to spend our money over the next 10 years? And we need to try and predict what our economic circumstances are going to be moving forward. So I think that comes with better long-term financial planning, and again, looking at new revenue sources, controlling expenses. But to say to the taxpayer right now what the future is going to hold, I wish I had a crystal ball. And if I did, I'd be a millionaire, and I'd probably be sitting on a beach talking to you right now.
That is a very fair point. Okay, so where we stand today, and your discomfort with 18.22% duly noted. But for residents of the township, Chris, can you assure them that this budget will meet the needs of the township? Again, just going back to where we were at almost 51%. Down to 18.22. I mean, that could be spun as a good news story coming down that much, but that seems an awfully big gap between what was said was needed. Are township residents going to get the services they need? Are roads going to deteriorate? Will community centers not be built or crumble? What's your message to the township?
Well, I think the number one thing is, look, we've got a great staff, and we've got hardworking individuals that keep our township running, right? When it comes to roads and our recreation facilities and providing the essential services that our residents need, they should expect that those services are going to continue. And I think as we move forward, we need to take a hard look on what services we're offering, right? The full gamut of it. There are maybe some things that we're offering right now in our service mix that could potentially go away, and hopefully we can identify areas that are low impact as we move forward, and then really focus on the core essentials. And you've hit on a few there, but I think, it could be spun as a good news story that 51% was trimmed down to 18, but I still don't think that was enough. It's still going to be a massive increase and a burden on affordability for a lot of our residents, because let's not forget, this is 18% of the Wilmot budget, but we also have the region increase that's coming down the pipeline as well that will directly affect our residents. So, moving forward, again, I think I stand by. We have some good staff, and the core services are going to be there. But as we move forward, I'd like to hear from residents and maybe additional suggestions on things that we could look at changing. And I'll tell you, throughout this process, we've seen an unprecedented level of engagement and a number of great suggestions from very, very smart individuals that live in our township. And I value those relationships and hope that we can continue those conversations as well.
Chris, I really appreciate you making time for the show today for this conversation. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks very much, Mike, for having me. I do appreciate your time. And everyone, if I can make one final plug, it is Election Day in Ontario. It doesn't matter who you vote for, but just get out and vote. That's our civic duty. And I would encourage everyone just to make sure you make time today.
An excellent reminder for sure. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks again for being here, Chris.
Thanks very much.
Chris Wilkinson, Ward 2 Councillor in Wilmot, joining us to talk about the 18.22% tax increase in this year's township budget that both he and Councillor Harveer Sidhu voted against. The two votes against are not enough to stop it. The budget passes at this number, and it's been described, and I get it, because you heard Chris talk about that snowball going down the hill and how far behind the township has fallen thanks to continued deferrals over previous elected councils in Wilmot. But an 18.22% number is massive, and it speaks to me to a concerning trend. If I'm being frank, what Chris talked about around the largesse and bloat in government budgets, municipal, provincial, federal, I tend to agree with. I think we have gotten a little too big government-wise, and there could be some streamlining achieved here. But it's going to take a while to turn that bus around as well. And you look across our community, Woolwich Township came in with a double-digit increase. The regional increase was just around the same number, just under double digits at 10%. These kinds of tax increases in my time covering municipal councils in this region and anywhere else, quite frankly, we were never talking about numbers, the likes of which we're talking about today. And here we are. Your thoughts always welcome on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I know that I'm the old guy in the room, and every time I think back on what once was, I'm reminded that it ain't supposed to stay the same. But there are things that stick out. And I'm not saying it's supposed to stay the same, but I do find it interesting that some people have the courage still today to talk about government largesse, maybe budgets and or departments within those large governments that are on the bloated side. I'm only looking back about a decade or so. It was the 2014 provincial election when then Conservative leader Tim Hudak talked about cutting the provincial workforce by 10% or 100,000 jobs. He wouldn't impact frontline services like nurses, doctors, police, etc. But this reduction in the provincial civil service by some 100,000 people would save the province $2 billion a year. And that's in 2014 dollars. And remember, look, this got turned into an anti-conservative, anti-Tim Hudak message. And we all know what the outcome of that election was provincially in 2014. But it's not as though Tim Hudak was proposing he would come in and just take a knife to the provincial civil service. Much of this could have been achieved through attrition, retirements, not replacing positions, etc. And really, when you think back on that and the fact that it didn't happen, and now you look federally and over the last number of years, the more than 100,000 people that have been added to the federal political payroll or the federal government's payroll, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing when the rest of us are paying our taxes to pay the salaries of people who make more money than we make, who have better benefits and incredible pensions that we could never hope to achieve. And we keep adding to that body of bureaucracy and employment. And I'm just not sure that's what a government's job. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's not what a government's job was. Create the conditions to create employment? Absolutely. Be one of the largest employers in the land? Absolutely not, from where I'm sitting. But it's always just my 2 cents. I get to share it on the show. The show is the Mike Farwell Show, and it's right here on 570 News Radio.
Hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah. I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just don't realize what you do to me. When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright. I'm hooked on a feeling.
Every Thursday morning at this time, that feeling is a lighter one. It's a big day. It's election day. You can be frustrated. You could even be furious. You will cast your ballot, though, in spite or otherwise, in support of the party you like. But we always get a break on Thursday mornings at this time because our good friend Gary Chalk joins us. Gary is the humor columnist behind the column Living Retired. You can find it for yourself at livingretired.press. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for the newsletter so it gets delivered right to your inbox. Mr. Living Retired Gary Chalk, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike, with a mic. And happy Réveillez, s'il vous plaît.
Who, what now, where?
Yeah, happy Réveillez, s'il vous plaît.
I got the... Huh?
That's my bilingual. It's the roll up the rim with Hortons.
Oh,
and that's all I ever get.
That's why it seemed... Yes, it seemed familiar because I've had a couple of those this week, and ding dang it, as you would expect, I also got the Réveillez, s'il vous plaît.
Yep. That's just standard in the Chalk household.
Just remember, in the Farwell household, chapeau. That is standard as the only French word I understand. I don't know why. I don't know why that one stuck, but anyway.
Well, you got it, and hats off to you.
Well played, sir. Well played. I understand, Gary Chalk, that you have this misguided idea that there is such a thing as good ice. Like I mean, other than the ice I put in my drink or I watch players skate on, I have a hard time finding any good ice.
Well, you just landed on where I am with good ice. You can have good ice in your drinks. The auditorium has good ice. For the Rangers, you have good ice at Kitchener City Hall, Waterloo Square, etc. That's all good ice.
Okay.
But there's bad ice, and the bad ice that I'm talking about is the ice that they use for curling. I mean, it's so bad. Every person curls, they have to have a broom. You ever think about that? And when the curling is in between throwing the rocks, they all stand around leaning on their broom.
It's like people I used to work with at the factory. They were really good at leaning on their brooms, Gary.
Yeah. I'm not going down that path, but I'm telling you. Do you curl?
I've always wanted to, but no, I do not.
Well, Jan and I tried it once. Curling is about, I think, maybe 40% like shuffleboard and about 40% lawn bowling. And I do know from my experience, the other 20% is drinking alcohol after the game.
Which is why I've always wanted to try, Gary.
Exactly. and then so mathematicians got involved. They say there's a 1-to-2 ratio for curling. You curl for an hour and you drink for 2 hours. And that's just sort of the way it goes. Curling, it only lasts for 4 or 5 months of the year. And that's just because curlers, they need the rest of the year to recuperate. They're either laid up in traction in hospitals because they tripped and fell, or they're back at those alcohol addiction programs. It's just part of the game. There's a couple of things. The type of people, you meet a lot of interesting people. When Jan and I, we did it once, like for one season. Well, actually, it's easier, I guess, to say who you won't meet. You won't meet the doctors, nurses, physical therapists, addiction counselors, because they can't get time off from working 7 days a week caring for curlers who've either fallen on the ice or fallen on the wagon.
Fair.
It is. Now, couple of rules. So if you and your wife consider taking up, there's 4 members on a curling team. Well, 5, I guess, when you include a person who they call the spare. And the spare is it's just another word for loser, because the job of the spare is to stay at home near their phone. And the spare gets a phone call to come to the rink when A, one of the other teammates slips and breaks their collarbone, or B, when the other team members have spent their monthly beer budget, which is usually on the first night of the month, so they need somebody to come in and buy the beer.
Absolutely. Somebody's got to pick up the tab.
So got to kick up. So that's the role of the spare. So the game begins when the 4 members arrive at the curling rink. They exchange pleasantries. They confirmed everybody's got their beer money. And then there's usually a slight delay before playing as everyone dashes out to their car to get their broom. They sort of forgot that they're supposed to bring this broom. Now, the person who calls the shots on the team is referred to as the skip. And the skip really has one duty, and they are to holler at everyone else. It's basically a bully. So skip is another word for bully, who always lets out a blood-curdling scream at the teammates, hard, hard, hard.
I would make such a great skip, Gary. I can yell and bully with the best of them.
Well, there you go. Then what you'll need on your team, Mike, is what they call a vice skip. And the vice skip that you're going to pick is sort of like the vice president, because really they only trusts them the vice when the skip has been transported to the hospital after rupturing his aorta from hollering at his teammates, telling them what to do. Right? And then there's two other members who are going to complete your foursome. They are called the second and the lead. And these players, well, basically they got tired of being henpecked at home, so they joined a curling league where they were assigned to a team so they could be henpecked by the skip and the vice skip.
Yeah, you thought you were getting out of the house to avoid one thing, and then you just find it at the curling club.
Exactly. And when the second and the lead hear hard, they just pretend they're back at home and they do what they're told. And they face each other and then begin sweeping frantically. And the way they go, this is actually when Jan and I curled one time for one season. We were put on a mixed league. We were total newcomers, and we were assigned with another husband and wife, and they were very experienced curlers. And the husband, he was right into it. He could holler hard with the best of them. And he intimidated particularly Jan. I'm more competitive. It didn't bother me. We would be going down the ice sweeping, and Jan developed this ability to, while she swept, talk to me while her lips were closed, and she was usually saying something like, "Why on earth are we doing this?" She found it really frustrating. But the fun part really continues for the second and the lead, and the loser, the other guy, if he happens to be there, the spare, because they do what they're told afterwards, and they put more money into the kitty. That's what their role is.
and they perform that role so well. Gary Chalk is with us, as he is every Thursday morning. He writes, Gary does, the humor column Living Retired, and he brings it to life with us on the show every Thursday morning at 10:30. You want bad ice? We got bad ice, but maybe there's some good ice, too. This is a great Canadian pastime, curling in the winter. We'll continue the conversation on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio, and Rogers TV. Every Thursday morning at this time, we are joined by Gary Chalk, who writes the humor column Living Retired. He brings that column to life for us on the show. And what I love about Gary is he is always so on the ball. Not only is he funny, but he's timely and topical. We've been talking about the good ice and the bad ice and the curlers that use the ice over the winter season. And wouldn't you know, Gary's right on the ball, because Kitchener's own Sam Muibrook is skipping Team Ontario's entry at the Brier, which opens in Kelowna this week. So go Team Muibrook, and the representatives from our fine city representing Ontario at the Brier in Kelowna as those national curling championships get underway. Gary, we did talk about those curlers, but there are two other groups of Canadians in winter that you have identified as well.
Yeah, there are. You're correct. Those are two words that you probably don't hear from your wife. Whenever my wife says, "Gary, you're right," I always say, "Jan, make sure you forewarn me so I don't trip and fall and hit my head on the granite countertop or something."
Who's the other Gary you're talking about? Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. But there are other groups. There's one group called the Snowbirds, and then the other group who are the ones who stay home all winter, and they're called the complainers. So let's sort of talk about the differences here. First, the Snowbirds. These people are the ones who decide not to clog the 401 during the winter, and rather they clog Interstate 75 when they're heading down to Florida. They also clog up the borders. It's just a mess.
They're like Canadian geese. You can count on them, right? Just follow the flock, yeah.
Yeah, Snowbirds, they stand out in Florida. They're at the beach. Doesn't matter how cold it is. They're lounging on the beach and clipping discount coupons for newspapers. And then they line up for the early bird all-you-can-eat buffet at about 2:30 in the afternoon. That's sort of the group called the Snowbirds. Then there's the other group, and these people are people who remain home all winter. You and I and all the others. These people pass their days and evenings, in fact, every waking moment, complaining about the weather, specifically driving during the winter, and these people are known as the bad winter drivers. Now,
I think I've met every one of them, just for the record.
at least once. I'm telling you, a research study was undertaken to look at the traits of bad winter drivers. One thing, they figured, how do we get to these people to communicate? So what they did was the research for the bad winter drivers, they developed their questionnaire, and then, and this was a good thing, they posted it online, because they figured that the bad winter drivers would be able to participate using their smartphones while they were driving in a snowstorm. They wanted to make sure that they got through to the right people. Now, the results were revealing, to say the least. These people, bad winter drivers, believe in the supernatural, freedom of speech, and they actually, get this, believe the Environment Canada weather forecast during the winter. So, and then they also, I think, believe that they should probably save money for their retirement. But at any rate, the bad winter drivers believe in getting in their car, venturing out during the annual winter storm of the season, because they need to pick up their lottery tickets.
Hey, there's priorities, Gary. Priorities.
Yeah, priorities.
Because if you don't win the lottery, you might not be able to be a snowbird, you see?
Well, okay, I guess that's how it works. But one thing they don't believe in, bad winter drivers do not believe in having winter tires. That's something they just are totally against. So instead, what they do is they place their trust with all our municipal workers and the highway road crews to plow through the roads and make it safe. So this puts a lot of responsibility on top of the winter road crews. I mean, as trained professionals, they got to maneuver that hydraulic-operated plow blade with, pinpoint precision to clear away tons of snow from residential streets and deposit then avalanche-high snowdrifts at the end of our driveways. That's such a powerful position. You know, our guy comes down our street, and we are on a cul-de-sac. So he gets to choose which of the 4 or 5 houses he's going to bury in. And I'm sure he just has a wonderful time. So then the other thing that bad drivers have to put up with is, we support the automobile industry. That's because the road crews spray tanker loads of corrosive salt, and then, just for good measure, to rub salt into the motorist wounds, the friendly snowplow operator working on triple overtime comes down, and they put some sort of a liquid brine that's so toxic that our automobiles, they begin to rot right in the middle of winter as they sit there in the driveway. Is your car still surviving the winter?
So far, so good. Although it's only the second winter she's had to survive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she's got some life left in her, I hope.
Well, I'll tell you, if you want, sometime get up in the middle of the night and look out, and because of all this salt and stuff on the roads, you can actually probably see a car just vanish. It'll vaporize right before your eyes. It'll just, it's gone. And the other thing, just to sort of put a cap on this, back to your chateau, the study of bad winter drivers asked these participants where they found themselves at the time of at the steering wheel, just as their car was about to spin out of control. And what did they do? 50% screamed, and the other 50%, they hollered to the passenger sitting beside them and said, "Here, hold my phone." Right? And we're starting to get into driverless cars. They've got them out in Southern California. You know what? We've got driverless cars in Southern Ontario. They're called bad winter drivers.
Amen, Gary Chalk. Amen.
I'm telling you. It's enough to make your tires spin.
It is indeed, and it's always fun having these conversations. Thursday mornings, 10:30. Thanks again for being here.
Hey, you know what? Go vote. If you do not vote, you do not complain.
Amen to that as well. Talk to you in a week, Gary.
Take care, Mike. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Gary Chalk is the humor columnist who writes Living Retired. Thursday mornings at 10:30. He brings the column to our show. We have some laughs, and he leaves us on a really important note. Let's just keep driving home the message, okay? Today is Election Day in Ontario. Get out there and cast your ballot. Please take the time to do it. Your employer has to give you time off to do it if you think that's the problem. Polls are open till 9 tonight, though, so plenty of time for you to get out. Mark your X on your ballot and engage yourself as a citizen. If you want more from Gary, you don't have to wait until next Thursday morning at 10:30. You can find his column online, livingretired.press. And while you're there, you can sign up for the weekly newsletter so it gets delivered right to your inbox. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. If you were listening to the show the other morning, thank you very much, first of all, because that means you've stopped by more than once, and I really appreciate that. And I mentioned something during the Farwell Show 5, which is 5 things I tell you about at the beginning of every show that I think might be of interest to you. And one of those notes on the Farwell Show 5 the other day was a follow-up from Waterloo Council, where Council made the decision to buy a parcel of land on Lincoln Road where a church currently sits. And the plan then becomes to build housing on that parcel of land. I have long thought, with no disrespect intended to our congregations around the community, but I've long thought that land where churches currently sit is an excellent resource for us to get more housing built. So I love what Waterloo is doing in this regard, but I've got some questions around what this all looks like, and we're going to get those questions answered coming up. So stay with us on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, if you see City of Waterloo Ward 5 Councillor Jen Vasic oot and about today, she might be at a polling station. She might just be wandering the streets and little hidden alleyways of Ward 5 in Waterloo. But gosh darn it, please remind her that she was scheduled to be right here with us right now on the show. And we are unable to make contact, which is unfortunate because I think this is a really good news story from the city of Waterloo. Although I have a couple of questions that I think are important to have answered. Chief among those questions to answer. So let me back up to the story itself, and I alluded to it before that update with Mark Douglas in the 570 News Center. Waterloo Council approved this week the purchase of a parcel of land that's just over an acre in size on Lincoln Road in Waterloo, right at the corner of Lincoln and Mayfield, to be exact, which is in Jen Vasic's ward, which is why we were hoping to talk to her about this. That property currently is home to St. Columba Church. And the church, like so many others in our community, once thriving, is no longer. The congregation has gotten smaller and smaller, and there is simply no need for the church anymore. So the city steps in and buys the land and the building that is currently on it because the church no longer needs it for its gatherings. So what does this mean? It means the city now has in its possession the land that it can use to build housing. There are estimates of anywhere from 12 residential units that can go on this 1 acre parcel of land at Lincoln and Mayfield in Waterloo, up to 30 if you tweak it a little bit with a zone change. And we have located Ward 5 Councillor Jen Vasic, who is on the phone with us this morning. Hello, Jen.
Hi, Mike. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I know my phone works, and I even double-checked the phone, but I know my phone works because Dave Jaworski just called.
What?
To ask me. He's listening to you, And he called to ask if, or to let me know that you're trying to get in touch with me. So there's a whole bunch of people looking out for you, Mike.
That is hilarious. If I have people like former Mayor Dave looking out for me, and by extension looking out for you, like, we are in pretty good shape, aren't we?
We are in good shape. Yes, exactly. Anyway, sorry about that.
That's quite all right. Thank you for making yourself available. And we'll just blame Devin, okay? Because he takes the abuse for everything over here. So okay. So I was just kind of giving the highlights of the story, which is the purchase that Waterloo Council has just approved of the land at Lincoln and Mayfield, where the St. Columba Church currently sits. Can you take us through how this came to pass, Jen?
Sure. It was by luck, really, where the church, as many churches are looking for what to do with their spaces. And they were working with a consultant who had done a community engagement process about what the congregation and surrounding neighborhood might be interested in seeing there. And through that process, as far as I understand, they hadn't reached out to the city. And that's not to blame anybody. Lots of people don't think about the city in these kind of matters in general. And so a resident reached out to me and said, hey, I think we could really use some community space in the neighborhood, which I have agreed with the whole time. Moses Springer is a great asset, but it's a tough community space outside of the ice rink, which is an important asset. But so that just launched the city into conversations and exploring it, and it wasn't a done deal. And there have been times in the past where I've sent properties that are for sale that I think might be a good idea to city staff, and they say, it's a bit of a hefty cost in comparison to the community need it might provide. But in this case, through the exploration, the price was right, and the community need very great.
When it comes to that community need, in the immediate term for the next few years, this becomes that community space. Arts is a big part of it, which is fantastic. And then longer term, Jen, and I think this is where the city's eyes might get bigger, because we talk housing, and then more housing, and this will provide the city the opportunity to provide that. More housing, yeah.
That's great, yeah. Well, that's fine. I really wanted to talk about the arts and culture space, but I'm glad to talk about the affordable housing as well. It's a huge need. It's a priority that we've identified at the city through the affordable housing strategy. And of course, we're not the only people prioritizing affordable housing. We're in a crisis situation. So it's sort of all hands on deck here. And so that'll be the plan moving, or the intention moving forward. And the requirement would be that if anything that is contemplated at that site exceeds what's permitted through the official plan and the zoning bylaws, then what would happen is, and I know this is important to people, is they want to be able to give their input. And so there would be a public process where people can provide their input on any proposed changes on the density and the housing aspect of it. But also the idea is that there's a strong interest, both from the city and the community, to continue having a community space in there. So I don't know what it could be, but an example, of course, would be having ground floor community space. And the public would also be able to participate in that process. What's cool about having the arts and creative industries piece of it here is it's going to really help to give us what we don't have right now, which is an understanding of, or a fuller understanding of, what arts and creative industries space needs are needed. We know that it's the second most important thing that community needs, because it was identified through a really exhaustive community consultation process with the arts and creative industries community. And so we know they need space, but now we need to get into the granular to understand the specifics of that so that we can deliver it. So will it stay in arts and culture space? Maybe, but that time will tell, and the public will be very much invited to participate in the process about the community space and the housing component.
I love the arts and culture piece myself. I'm a huge proponent of the arts in our community. And Jen, I'm just running up against the clock. Can I impose on a little bit more of your time to continue this?
I'm fine with that, sure.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'll just put you on hold for a sec, okay?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Jen Vasick is the Ward 5 councillor in Waterloo. Lincoln and Mayfield is where St. Columba Church currently sits. It's in Jen's ward, Ward 5. The city has just approved the purchase of that 1 acre and a little bit parcel of land. In the near term, the immediate term, it is an arts and culture hub, and we're going to talk more about that. And then also, how does the city make something like this work financially? The conversation continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Jen Vasick is the Ward 5 councillor in Waterloo. She joins us this morning to talk about a property in her ward at the corner of Lincoln and Mayfield, currently home to St. Columba Church, that the city of Waterloo has just agreed to purchase. And in the next 3 years, it will be used as programming space to support the needs of local arts organizations and or other community groups. Jen, what is it about that excites you so much?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think arts and culture has forever been used as tools to help us as individuals be resilient and build our own resilience and understand our place in the world and navigate challenging situations and help us understand one another better. So on an individual level, I think that the arts have such an impact. But on a broader scale, the arts have always been used to challenge what we think about the status quo. And the only way that we can become a better society is to critique how we've always done or thought of things. So in summary, the arts are used as a tool for individual resilience and resistance. And then maybe to get more buy-in for arts and culture, there's an economic benefit to arts and creative industries as well, which is how we sell arts and creative industries outside of that intrinsic benefit that comes with them.
When it comes to this parcel of land and its purchase, Jen, you said it was at the right price. Do we know that price? And how does the city find the money? Because I know it wasn't in this year's budget.
Yes, absolutely. An important consideration. And like I said earlier, I've thrown other potential opportunities the city's way, and staff are always very cognizant, of course, of the financial impacts and have told me that the community need doesn't match the price. And so that's just to say that city staff are very mindful of that as well and never are going about things willy-nilly thinking that we can just purchase things for the community benefit. And so the city has a long-term financial plan, which means that it has savings and it thinks about unanticipated things that happen, just like anyone would at home. Hopefully, if you're able to, you have a little savings account. So when your furnace breaks down, you can replace it. Or if an opportunity comes up for just that, I don't know, right, a piece of furniture you've been looking for. Silly example, but you know what I mean, that kind of thinking. And so it was $2.9 million. And that amount will be allocated for the sale, legal and transfer costs, as well as some needed renovations that need to happen to make it usable. So, and it comes from some reserves that the city has that are dedicated to affordable housing, as well as what's called the tax rate stabilization reserve. And typically you use that to sort of deal with any fluctuations in tax rates, but it can also be used when it has enough in it for other big community priorities like this. And affordable housing long-term is really, I think we've all bought into the idea that it is one of the top community needs.
No question about it. And that's why I said from the outset that I think this is such a great news story for the city. It's a great use of this land. And as the ward councillor, I know you've been through this before, Jen, and so you'll go through the process here, even though we're getting further down the road. But we're kind of like at the raw material stage here of this parcel of land. Eventually, housing will be built, and I suspect the community will be consulted with and brought along as the plans on this parcel of land develop.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that happens is through the planning process. It's a requirement if there's any zoning changes or official plan changes that are needed to be made. I can't assume that that's going to be the case at this point, but if that were the case, then the community would certainly be involved, not just because we want to, but of course we do, but because we have to. And I do my best just personally to try and update people on the Facebook pages. And of course, not everyone who's listening to you has a interest in this particular parcel, but if you ever have anything you want to say or be considered, you can email your city councillor and say, please pass this along. And all you have to do is let them know you have my explicit permission to pass on my email. Please give this to staff for consideration, and we will do that. And if you don't want your contact information, just say, please share this information without my contact information. So everyone sort of in the community also has a responsibility to provide their input if they'd like it to be considered, and doing that through like email or is really the best way to do that.
Jen, I appreciate you making time for the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me and for your excitement.
I am super excited. I wish I was in Ward 5 because I could share a few ideas, but I'll look forward to watching this from afar.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Jen. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Jen Vasic is the Ward 5 councillor in the city of Waterloo. Are you in Ward 5 in Waterloo? Are you in Waterloo? Want to share your ideas? I heard Jen say, right, her explicit permission to share her email address. Jen, Jen, .Vasic, V as in Victor, ASIC as in cat, jen.vasic at waterloo.ca. We're long enough, probably in the 5 to 10 year range, to putting shovels in the ground and starting to build housing at the corner of Lincoln and Mayfield in Waterloo. But this is where housing will rise. 12 residential units is what the report suggests could be built today. You want to tweak the zoning a little bit? Okay. And I suspect the city will, because housing. And then you can get up to 30 residential units on this kind of pie-shaped parcel, just over an acre in size, on the corner of Lincoln and Mayfield. You've got amenities. You've got transit nearby. It's a pretty good place to intensify. But when we do that, we know how neighbors tend to react. So we'll follow along with the planning process. We'll follow along with the consultation process. And in the meantime, we will see this now former church be turned into a little bit of a hub to support the needs of local arts organizations and other community groups. I think it's fantastic. $2.9 million. Money well spent on the part of the city. Seems like it from where I'm sitting today. And now you know more. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. And your calls and thoughts matter the most on the show, so let's go to the phones right now. Diana, good morning.
Good morning, Mike Farwell. I really appreciate meeting you. I've just discovered the old Grantley Hoffman from Shuffle Shop. And you're not that old. I don't think so, anyhow.
I'm getting close, Diana. I'm getting close, let me tell you.
Well, I'm a senior that remembers Shuffle Shop and remembers Sacred Heart and that big tall needle across from the courthouse. To me, is not a housing development that holds something like 1,000, I don't know, apartments. But I'm calling. I got sort of sidetracked. I was calling on something else because I've never really, to tell you the truth, heard of your show. I'm not an old-fashioned radio person, although like back to Grantley days. Anyhow, but what I'm interested in is when they're building these I know the church you're talking about at the corner of
Lincoln and Mayfield.
Lincoln and Mayfield, yeah. And what I was getting devoid of talking to Devin for what I was originally calling about. I didn't even know you were a talk-in show until I pulled up his Channel 20. So anyhow, there's a lot of kind of advertising to be done. But anyhow, let me get out what I'm trying to say.
Okay, Diana, I'm gonna have to ask you to hang on. I'm so sorry because I'm late for news already. I'm going to pick up with Diana right when we come back. You never know what you get when you answer the phone. This is the Mike Farwell Show. Late for news, as always, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I'm going to win the Flipside today, okay? Just so you know. I mean, I determine in my mind every week if there's a winner and a loser on the flip side. I'm winning today. I'm winning. We'll get right to that flip side question in a moment, but I had to put Diana on hold before that news update with Matt. Almost called him Match. Hutchison. I usually call him Hutch. Diana, I'm sorry to make you wait. So you wanted to talk about St. Columba Church, Lincoln, and Mayfield. Yes.
I'd like to probably wrap my head around how you only get, did you say 310 or 31 units on that piece of property?
Somewhere between 12 and 30 will ultimately be the number.
And it'll be like stacked, like in what my old-fashioned lady call apartment buildings.
I would have to think it would be stacked in some way, yes.
It wouldn't be like 12 wartime houses. There was somebody's thought, I don't know how many years ago, about building some more what I called wartime houses. That
idea did come out last summer at a federal government cabinet retreat. I like the idea. The federal government was talking about a catalog where you could pick from basically prefabricated wartime houses. I hope we get there, Diana. I do, but this particular project is not talking about that, no.
Realize it's all about getting X number of people, like I call the Space Needle across from the new courthouse or whatever, getting X number of thousands of families in one place. But to me, that's going to be looking at, what do you call it, in the dense housing in Toronto and places.
Yeah, no, you know what, Diana, you're spot on, and I appreciate the call. We are talking about intensification. We're talking about all the time. And on a 1 acre parcel of land, it's a corner right now with a church, a parking lot, open green space, but you don't have the room there for your traditional. I live in a wartime bungalow, and built in 1953. The depth of our lot is embarrassing, if not grandiose by today's standards, because it's an older neighborhood. We ain't building like that no more. We're looking for ways to kind of shoehorn housing into various spaces. And I know what you mean by that Space Needle you talk about. It's 40. Is that the 39 story or the 44 story? Either way, it's a scrape in the sky. It's kind of skyscraper condominium building in downtown Kitchener, which we're building a lot of too. We're growing taller to avoid spreading out more. And the city of Waterloo, in this case, I think has identified an excellent opportunity. But I promise you this, when we get to the phase of this development at Lincoln and Mayfield, where the housing piece will come into it, for the next few years, it's going to serve arts groups and other community groups. And then after that, get into the building the houses. Neighbors will say, yeah, but this doesn't fit the character. Yeah, but what about all the extra traffic, etc.? But this is where we're at. You want to grow to 1 million people in the next 30 years? You're going to have to find places for people to live. Okay, I had kept Diana waiting, and I wanted to make sure we sort of cleared that off our plate and now move into the flip side for the day, which is something we do every Thursday morning at 11:30. Have a little bit of fun, and maybe in today's case, it can be you poking fun or making fun of me, because here's what we're talking about on the flip side today. I would like to know from you, even though I know I'm already winning this contest, but what is the strangest way you have ever injured yourself? What was the strange injury that you suffered? 519-570-2545. Star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. I thought that I would have won this months ago, the time that I bent down to pick up Rosie the pandemic pup's leash and threw out my back. Like, threw out my back to the point I was on the floor on all fours and not able to get back up for a little bit. But no, I went and won. I even took that one a step further. I woke up this morning. I don't know. I don't know what I did in my sleep. I'll tell you this. I woke up this morning around 4 a.m. And to Devin, the guy on the other side of the glass, you're just going to have to hang up on Diana. I know you're getting hung up on the phone there because somebody... we got other people to talk to now. Poor Diana. She just wants to have her voice heard. Lots of people already phoning in. I woke up this morning around 4 because I'm a man of a certain age, and this is what you do, right? And everything was fine. And then when my alarm went off at 5:15 to get up for getting up, I don't know what happened between 4-ish and 5-ish, but I have done some kind of number to my shoulder, collar. I don't know what is something pinched. Is it kinked? I don't know what you call it, but I can't even see straight today. I'm not that you want to know my pain, but my claim to fame in today's Flipside question is, what's the strangest way you ever hurt yourself? Sleeping. So I win. I don't know what I did to myself in my sleep between 4 and 5:15 a.m. today, but I did something bad. Real bad. It hurts like a son of a gun. So that's my answer. Hey, Farwell, what's the strangest way you ever hurt yourself? Well, there's this one time I went to bed and then I woke up. Let's go to the phones and hear from you. George, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. That is a good one. I'm not going to beat that one, but here goes anyway.
Okay.
We're going to bowling. A whole bunch of us are going bowling, social bowling. So we're talking and drinking a little bit, and I'm bowling. I go down. I'm not looking. I reach down to reach for the ball. Another one shoots out.
Oh, man.
And you could probably guess what's going to happen. My hand is there to go pick it up. I'm still talking, not paying attention. The ball basically sandwiches my finger, and my index finger had a broken finger.
Oh, my gosh. Now, was it your bowling hand, George?
You know what? It was, because that's why I was reaching
Of
down.
course. So there goes your social outing.
Yeah, and my finger started to swell. It wasn't long. I wasn't able to bowl anymore.
Oh, my gosh. That is a great story. Broken finger by bowling ball. Christine, what about you? What's the weirdest way you've ever been injured?
I was a kid, and me and my one sister and two cousins were playing tag outside, and one came up right behind me and slammed me. I hit the light post with my chin.
You hit the light post with your chin.
Yeah, metal light post.
Christine, you know what? The games we play, right? The games we play, and Christine makes me think of, because I looked this up just for fun, and a bunch of doctors shared at the end of a year, those year-end things we sometimes get from police, for example. Here are the strangest 911 calls of a year. Well, doctors in San Francisco shared one year what the group of strangest injuries were that they heard in the past year, and more than 17,000 patients had walked into a wall. Very similar to what Christine's talking about, except she was being chased in a game of tag. Imagine, though, presenting to your doctor with the injury you suffered because you walked into a wall. 400 had walked into a lamppost, just like Christine. Paul, what's the strangest injury you've ever suffered?
Geez, I stepped out of an airplane and cracked a metatarsal bone in my foot.
Stepped out of an airplane? Was it in the air?
Yeah, about 3,000 feet.
Get out of town.
It's true.
So you were using an old military canopy chute?
Yeah, back then, yeah, a round chute and a static line jump.
Yep.
Yeah, everything went fine until I hit the ground.
Paul, thanks for that. I like the way you describe it, though. Strangest way he was injured? Not skydiving, stepping out of a plane and breaking a bone in his foot. Ron, what about you? Strangest way you've ever been injured?
Well, I was working in a dish pit for a restaurant known as Jack Astor's. I turned.
It's not the restaurant's fault, Ron.
Oh, I'm not blaming the restaurant.
Okay, I just want. Okay, yeah.
And my body twisted the other way, causing an L4 or L5 spinal cord injury.
No way.
Yeah.
Dish pit, man, that's dangerous work.
Yeah, well, basically, I pulled the innards through the outwards, and then it got pinched by the two vertebrae.
How long was the recovery from something like that?
Well, they didn't know what the heck happened to me, and I went through a whole year and a half of testing.
Oh, my gosh.
And then once they figured out that, yeah, I kind of somehow, they thought I had a ruptured disc. But when the neurosurgeon opened me up, he said it was a can of worms. All the worms were out of the can.
Ouch, 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 ouch. That one hurts me just listening to it. It really does. Let's get another one in before the break. Tim, what's the strangest way you've ever injured yourself?
Hey, Mike, how's it going? I got actually two. It'll be really quick, though.
Sure.
So back in the 80s when we actually played outside, we were having piggyback fights. And my brother had a pen in his back pocket. And when I slid off his back, I got the pen in the old scrotum, 3 stitches.
No. I'm already in enough pain. Don't add to it. Are you kidding me right now?
No, sir. I'm going to give you another
Jiminy Christmas.
four, so another one, 4 stitches in the scrotum.
What,
Tim? The old creatives, the big old 8x8s, and they kind of look like a beaver had chewed them off, and they're like came to a point,
Uh-huh.
Back in the day, like they
Tim.
don't make them anymore. But anyway, I slid down the creative, and I smacked into that poor
Tim,
8x8 corner.
Tim, no, I can't anymore. You do me a favor. Do me a favor, please. Just down the road in Guelph, my friend, they invented the plastic protective cup that goes on a jockstrap. You should wear one every day.
Well, I don't play outside anymore.
I don't care where you play. If you've had multiple incidents where you need stitches in your scrotum, even saying that makes me catch my breath. The flip side this morning, what's the strangest way you hurt yourself? I went to sleep last night, woke up in ridiculous pain. Don't know how. We'll hear your stories as we continue with the flip side on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I was just telling Devin Robertson, the guy on the other side of the glass during the break, that the pain that I'm suffering is so severe. I was going to call in today injured or something. I can't come to work. But I thought to myself, what do I have to do? I have to sit around and talk. And then as Dev quite correctly pointed out, I also get the opportunity to complain about the pain that It's so stupid. But it also inspired the flip side today. What's the strangest way you ever injured yourself? Paul said he stepped out of a plane and broke his foot, but the plane started at 3,000 feet, and he didn't really stick the landing with that old military-style canopy parachute. George broke his finger between 2 bowling balls when he was reaching for one, and the other one got returned. I went to sleep and then woke up with incredible pain. Sometime between 4 and 5:15 this morning. I don't know what I did in my sleep, but holy Hannah, am I paying the price. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Patty, what's the strangest way you've ever injured yourself?
So this is a 3-for-1.
Okay.
I sneezed so hard, I held it in. I ruptured a blood vessel in my eye.
Oh, my gosh.
I threw my back out, and as I moved my hand to grab my back, I broke my pinky and ring finger on a wall.
Well, because, Patty, you needed, your back was in such pain, so it's whipping that hand around. Boom, there go the fingers. But the blood vessel in the eye.
I sneezed so bloody hard.
Oh, my gosh.
And I held it in. The blood vessel popped in my eye.
All right, so the moral of the story, Patty, is
let her rip.
You read my mind and exact quote. Let her rip. If you got to sneeze, you got to sneeze. Thank you for the call and the great story. I'm glad you're okay today. Doug, good morning.
Hey, Mike, I got 2 quick ones for you. One was self-inflicted, but the first one, I remember about 55 years ago, my brother said he threw one of my running shoes in the garbage. So I opened up the garbage bag, stuck my head in, and got 7 stitches in my forehead. There was a broken bowl in there, and even to this day, I can tell you what that bowl looks like.
55 years later.
The second one is, I used to bowl in the Men's Industrial League in Guelph every Wednesday night. Now, my wife had given me 2 daughters, so I thought, okay, I'll do the right thing. I'll get the vasectomy. So the doctor did the vasectomy on my bowling night. So I had asked him to give me a couple extra shots of freezing, which he did. About halfway through the night, the swelling had become so intense that with all I could do to finish the second game, missed the third, and then talk about swelling, wow.
Oh, my word. Oh, my word. Doug, thank you, I think. You know what? I don't think Doug's a bowler, though. I think he's a hockey player, because hockey players play through the pain, right? Hey, Doc, it's my bowling night. I know I need this vasectomy, but Just inject me with a little extra freezing so I can still stretch and throw a ball down in a varnished alley to try to score the most points in a bowling game. You wouldn't want to miss your bowling game for a vasectomy. Bad scheduling, Doug, bad scheduling. Patty T, another Patty with us. Hi, Patty.
Yeah, hi, Mike. I just happened to catch this, and I'm between places I'm going. And from Listowel, so I've got three really quick ones. One was my last year of high school. We're talking 1969, so like 500 or 600 years ago. But whatever. I was a hurdler, and it was during a really strict competition, and I tore everything. It was horrible, horrible, and that was not good. And then I was a bus driver, which all my jobs I've left. Anyway, one night, and I brought the car over to the side of the bus because it was pouring rain, had my child, I think he was like a year and a half or two, anyway, in my arms, and I'm looking down at the car seat, or the steps to go out of the bus, and I'm like, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. I fell and slipped, and it's do I throw the baby or save myself? So I hung on to him. I ended up...
I would have thrown the baby, Patty.
I know you would have. Anyway, I karate chopped the bottom step of the bus, broke my arm, and saved the baby. But anyway, long story, and I'll keep real fast. Had tickets to the Royal Alley that night with my daughter to see cats or something. Anyway, there's no refund on those tickets. Anyway, ended up going to the show, went to the hospital later, got the cast, did the whole bit, and that was it. So the last one was walking the dog in the backyard, and I went to go up a slight incline. My foot stayed, but my rest of my leg decided it was going to move. I broke both bones and dislocated the ankle, and it wasn't pretty. Anyway, that was 25 years ago.
Patty, thanks for the call and the stories. Walking the dog in the backyard. And listen, if I'm the parent of that child who I saved while breaking my own arm, I would remind him of that for the rest of his days. When you were an infant, I could have thrown you, but I hung on and suffered a broken arm as a result. Phil, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Late 70s, a bunch of teenage guys from the North Ward hop on the Via train to go to Maple Leaf Gardens to see a hockey game. Well, the drinking got in the way of the hockey. So
Shocker.
Take the train home. And, everyone's quite inebriated, and you're on a speeding, moving train. And I went to use the washroom, stood there, and I was faster than I should have been, and the zipper bit me.
No, come on, Phil.
And, like when you get your zipper caught in your coat, you got to yank it down.
Okay.
That's the stories.
No.
That's why to this day I sit down.
Okay, Phil. I would too. I could never. That actually is something that, I don't know about you, Dev, but that's always in the back of my mind. Like, what if, right? Guys, don't drink and pee. I don't know what the other option is, okay? Because, anyway, that's, oh my God, right, straight out of There's Something About Mary, straight out of a movie. Sean, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, this was back in the late 80s. I'm getting in the car at the parking lot at work, right? So it's a bit icy. I get in, I go to sit down, I slip. Head contacts the door frame. Concussion. What a headache. Ended up having to be woken up every so often all night. That was not good.
Yeah, you know what, Sean? That makes me think. So you're getting into the car, you slip, you bang your head to the point you've got a concussion. I think most people driving on the roads today are concussed. I'll tell you that for free. The strangest way you ever hurt yourself. That's what we're talking about on the flip side today. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Got an email from Phil to Mike at 570news.com. No more scrotum injuries, please. You know what, Phil? I think you're right. Listen, I have to get you to the 570 News Center for an update, and I have to do that on time. We were talking on the flip side today about the strange ways you've injured yourself, and I'm with Phil. We have had way too many scrotum injuries, so no more of those. But if you want to carry this over into our Talkback Hour, open lines are coming up next. I'm happy to entertain more stories. I thought I had you beat by injuring myself while sleeping. Turns out you might even be stranger than me. The Mike Farwell Show and open phone lines continue on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If Don't talk back. Just finished cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight. Or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak. Don't talk back.
Well, it is one of those days where we carry something over from the previous half hour. That something is our Flipside question about how you injured yourself, that strange way you got hurt. I thought I was taking home the prize today because I woke up this morning somewhere around 4 a.m. to go to the washroom. Everything was fine. My alarm goes off an hour and a bit later. And let me tell you, I have got some kind of screaming pain in my left shoulder. Like, it's unreal. Maybe it's when the alarm went off and I was so angry I spun to smash it, which I didn't do. But I would love to figure out the answer to the question of what the HE double hockey sticks I went and done to myself. Anyway, there were so many calls in the last half hour that we're carrying it over into this open line hour just to hear more of those stories. But we are also... Phil emailed, and I think he's on the right track. No more scrotum stories. I can't believe I have to say that on the show, but here we are. Okay, back to the phones we go. Grant, good afternoon. Are you kidding me, Grant? Grant's not kidding me. He's not even there. All right. Mary, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Oh, there's lots of good stories, eh?
Oh, well, if you call... getting stitches in your scrotum a good story, sure.
Yeah, well, I can laugh, right? But anyway, it was in the COVID, and we didn't go away. Not to say it couldn't have happened. I still like taking a bath, but I did have my husband put in a hand grip, to help, and I'm pretty steady on my feet. But anyway, this particular day, I had my hand on the grip, and ready to put one foot out, and all of a sudden both feet slipped from under me, and I hit an almighty hit on the left side of my body and broke 4 ribs.
You broke
Painful.
4 ribs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is painful. It's hard to breathe then, Mary.
Well, I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't go anywhere. They don't do anything for you.
Tape it up, get back out there.
Well, they don't even do that. No. But anyway, my daughter had broken her. She slipped on black ice and broken her rib, and I said, "What do you think I should do?" Like, I can take a lot of pain, but this was excruciating. My husband had to help me in and out of bed. He had to dress me. He had to take me to the washroom and get me off the washroom, toilet, blah. Anyway, that's that story.
All right, Mary, thank you for sharing the story about the strange way you injured yourself. I told my beloved, I am looking for the sympathy vote. I said, I just want to lay on my back and drink beer. Is that too much to ask? Mike, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. One thing you don't know about me is that I'm extremely tall. I'm just brushing 6'7". And I was at a friend's place at a cottage, and without realizing it, I walked into a ceiling fan, and I got about 8 stitches in my head because I walked into a ceiling fan. But at the cottage, there's all sorts of mischief going on. And one time I was hurt because my uncle was playing Tarzan, and he was swinging through the ropes and everything, carrying the kids, and the rope broke, Mike, while he was in mid Tarzan call, and I went down down like a ton of bricks. So those are my 2 stories, Mike.
All right, Mike. Thanks for sharing them. What a picture you paint. Mid Tarzan call, and down he goes. Greg, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. A couple of just quick stories. Nothing too exciting about injuries, but one might make you feel better. But starting with the first one, my part-time job days at the beer store, moving a skid of beer the one time, and with the hand jigger and the motorized one, and going backwards, like you often move things backwards that way. Didn't realize that an empty skid behind me. I'm the one that had put it there, so it's all my fault. Anyways, tripped on that. The machine didn't quite stop in time, and then pinched my foot pretty good.
Ouch, yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'm not taking this shoe off because I think it's going to swell and I might not get back on. So I finished the shift just limping. Okay, no problem. in the morning, the swelling on the top of this foot, it was easily like 2 inches worth of a big, like almost like 4 inch long. It was just like gross to look at. My foot shook like jelly. There was so much of a swelling going on. And the funny thing is, I missed no time at the beer store, but I missed 2 days at my other job because of injury. So WSI, I get injured on one job, miss no time, but miss time on another. Probably never heard of that before. But secondly, I'm right with you with this sleeping stuff. Maybe within the last few years, I have to watch it when I wake up that I don't stretch too hard. I pop a hamstring if I just wake up and also just want to give a good stretch. All of a sudden, oh my God! And I don't know. If there's a health issue, I should get looked at, or if that's just old age and it sucks.
Craig, I appreciate the call. I think it is old age and it sucks. So 2 things. I love how Greg takes accountability. I put that skid there. I forgot it was there. I backed into it. It's my own fault. I admire that beyond words. I really do. And then it's old age and it sucks. You might remember the beginning of the year, and I really do have to give you an update on this, but because of that time, I bent over to pick up the dog leash and threw out my back. I thought, well, I need to get serious about this. And I think Greg and I are in the same boat. If you don't do anything for 50 plus years, it catches up to you, because my hamstrings are tight as a drum and various other things. That's how I threw out my back. So I started doing some stretching, and I thought, while I'm doing these back stretches, I should do some quadricep and hamstring stretches and learn to, I've never in my life been able to touch my toes. Yeah, it lasted for about 3 weeks. I was off and on for a while, and I haven't done much stretching since. My goal was to touch my toes. People said, oh, you'll be able to touch your toes in a matter of weeks. Yeah, no, I'm barely below my knees when it comes to touching my toes. So the moral of the story here, kids, is keep stretching. It's an underappreciated part of your overall health, in my humble opinion. We'll continue taking your calls. The strangest way you got injured, right after this on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The Talkback Hour is your hour, so let's get right back to the phones. Hear more from you. Ted, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Ted.
So my story of the most painful accident goes back about 55 years to my university days, and it was my senior year, final week studying for finals, trying to graduate. I had an apartment. It was very hot because I was taking a summer semester. And I'm trying to lift one of those big windows with the big wooden frame that you lift straight up. And you probably need a piece of wood to hold it up, which I didn't have. And it came smashing down onto my thumb. So you get a blood buildup under your nail that throbs every time your heart beats. And ended up going to the University Infirmary, where they have to drill through your nail to release the blood from the accident.
Yep, they sure do. You are not telling a lie, Ted, not one bit.
It wasn't fun.
Thanks for sharing the story. You know, that reminds me, I'll never forget this. One of my best friends, he used to host, we went to his place. I don't know why it became the gathering place, but I think every friend group has one. So, you know, Super Bowl parties, we did Oscar parties every year. And Oscar party, February-ish, right? Anyway, wintertime. Or maybe it was the Super Bowl party, because that's always in the winter. It doesn't matter. It was hot in the place, just like Ted's talking about. My buddy opens the window, and then he's over I think he was trying to open it and it slipped or something. But anyway, he got his hand stuck. And he's calling out to the rest of us, and, you know, guys, right? But he's telling us, hey, guys, my hands are stuck. And we just think this is funny. He's making a joke. He's like, no, I'm serious. Like, my hands are literally stuck in the window that just crashed down on them. Eventually, when we stopped laughing and making jokes about him, we went over and helped him out. But it took a bit. That's what Ted's story just reminded me of. Fred, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Fred.
So this one is a little different. This is one that things are not what they seem.
Okay.
So I'm about 4 years old in the mid-'60s, and I had these very long, all-in-one pajamas, the ones with the built-in feet and everything else.
Oh, yeah, nice onesie. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm running around the living room, and all of a sudden I trip, and I go headfirst into the console TV. End up getting a few stitches in my forehead. And for many, many years, I thought that's what happened. And then one day at Thanksgiving, I'm talking to my sister, and she says, "Hey, do you remember that time that you hit your head on the TV?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you know how you thought you ran around and tripped over your own feet and into the TV?" "Yeah." "Well, that's not really what happened. What really happened is that you were running around and I wanted you to stop, so I stuck my foot out."
No way. Fred. I hope you have stopped talking to that sibling.
Well, I laugh about it now. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Good man. Good man. Thanks for the call today.
All right.
Nice hearing from you. You know, it's funny that Fred's on the phone today because I am still haunted by the call he made. I think it was Monday. He called and asked me a direct question. I think I'm going to share it on the show again tomorrow between noon and 1. And I'm still haunted by the answer I gave and the question that he asked. But phones are busy today. So just put a pin in that. We're going to get to it tomorrow on the Talkback Hour. Fred just left me with a question that I still don't think I can answer. And I feel bad. This has honestly been haunting me since he asked it. Because I want to always be straight up and in your face and direct. And he asked a direct question, and I still don't think I can answer it. I didn't answer it well on Monday. I'm going to try harder tomorrow. I've been thinking about it for days. But I will do it tomorrow. No more today. Back to the phones. Gary, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike. How are you, bud?
Good, thanks, Gary. How are you?
I'm good. Long time no talk. It's Gary from Guelph. I'll make it quick because I know it's busy, and this is a good one. That's for sure. The segment that you have going.
The strange injuries we've suffered.
Oh yeah. So I one time I was sleeping, and I got up in the morning, and my lovely better half, she's always up at stupid times, she calls it, like 3, 4 o'clock or whatever. And I roll out of bed around 7, and I come out to the living room, and I'm like, "Hi, honey, how are you? Good morning." And she goes, "Oh my God, what happened to your face?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You're bleeding, and you got like cuts and scratches." I'm like, "Get out of here." So I go in the bathroom, I turn on the light, and there's a scratch by my nose, on my chin, at the side of my ear. Like, it looked like I was attacked by a mountain lion. I'm like, I don't understand what happened, but she said, "You must have had a really bad dream or something because you were like just digging and clawing at your face." And then I had to go to work that night and explain to everybody, no, I wasn't abused by my lovely better half. Everything is good. Or, but yeah, I couldn't understand it, but it was a weird one.
So you actually got into some dream that led you to claw and scratch your own face?
I guess. I had one on the side of my nose, on my chin, part of my ear, just marks, like it was. I should have taken a picture of it, that's for sure. But she was floored. She was like, "Oh my God!" So then, going to work and explaining to, my coworkers were like, "What the hell happened to you?" And I'm like, "Well, I was in my sleep." And they're like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah.
What does the other guy look like?
Exactly. Good to hear from you, Gary. Thanks.
Oh, you too. Take care. Bye.
You too. I love it. That reminds me of sleepover days. And, again, kids will be kids, right? So the first person to fall asleep was usually the victim of the magic marker or the makeup kit that somebody found in the house, and they would get made up. And I'll never forget. I think we added eyebrows, curly. I can't. But anyway, we got the magic marker out on my buddy's face, and the next morning at breakfast, talking to our buddy's mom who hosted the sleepover, and bless her heart, she did not break talking to this kid who didn't know that we had added a bunch of color to his face and things that didn't belong there. And we had breakfast, and it wasn't until he went into the washroom and got a look at himself that he realized what we had done. Good times, good times. It's your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Busy. Back to the busy phones. Mary, hello.
Hi, Mike. I had another thing for you.
Okay, so you broke your ribs in the bathtub. That's the one we got before. What's your other one?
I was went to the fridge of an evening to get something, and I shut the door. But I slipped and put my head through the drywall, and it didn't hurt. Mike?
Listen, I don't want to make the joke, Mary, because I really like you. I thought you were going to make the joke yourself.
Well, I am, but I just didn't. It's all silent. Anyway, my husband,
you slipped and you broke the drywall with your head, and it didn't hurt.
I'm German background, and my husband is British, and he always calls me his little square head. Okay? So when my head went through, thankfully I missed the 2x4s, and I said, there's proof. I'm not a square head.
Very good.
I'm a round head.
But you know what, Mary? Even if you had hit a 2x4 with that head of yours, it wouldn't have hurt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because
I
you're a
said to
tough
my
German.
son, let's put a frame around it.
Thank you for calling.
have a
Okay.
great day.
You do. Bye-bye. It's so funny. Sometimes it's like, Farwell, you interrupt me too much. Other times it's like, are you still there? Like, I can't win for losing on this ding-dang show. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't want to be the one to make the joke at Mary's expense, but of course it popped into my head, right? She falls. She puts her head through the drywall, but it didn't hurt. It's waiting for a punch. Mary, don't set me up like that. Don't bring me to the precipice of temptation and make me sit silently because I like you so much. Here's the thing. I'm forgetting the gentleman who called earlier with not one but 2 injuries to his nether regions. Stitches twice in an area where you don't want to have stitches. And I said to him, he should wear a jock strap wherever he goes, plastic cup protector included. Mary, may I suggest a helmet? Life is tough. Wear a helmet. Your Talkback Hour continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I feel like we have a great big water cooler here at the station, and we're all just gathering around it for a chat on this election day. I love it. I'm here for it all the time. Around the water cooler, let's talk like the co-workers that we are. Kyle, good afternoon.
Mr. Mike, hey, is this like your Christmas elections?
I do really enjoy elections, although I admit to getting increasingly frustrated and cynical by them. But I wish we would treat it like Christmas, Kyle, and everybody opens a present, i.e. everybody votes, because not enough of us are doing that for sure.
I feel like at your house, you're the type of guy, and no offense because I love you like a brother, but you're the type of guy who'd be like, I'm putting $5 that Perth Wellington is going to be conservative.
Oh, you're absolutely not wrong.
Okay, so I'm the same way. I have my cold beer is waiting for me when I go home because I'm the same way. Like tonight, I'm going to crack open one, relax, and I'm going to watch the election and I'm just going to have fun with it and be like, you know what? I think Toronto Centre is going to be NDP. I think Niagara is going to be, just throwing names out there. But I'm like you, man. But I just was asking because I feel like, elections are like, your Christmas, whether it's federal or provincial or municipal, and it's fun. So anyways, thanks, Mike. Have a great day, my friend.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate it. Yeah, and it's been an interesting week in light of that, because the federal Liberal leadership debate was on the English language. I couldn't have gotten through the French language because the only French word I know is chapeau. But on Tuesday, the English language debate, I would have watched. And I do this not as a party supporter, but as a political junkie. And I had a hockey game to broadcast instead, so I missed it. I remember years and years ago watching the end of a leadership convention on a Sunday afternoon in June or something. It was the summertime. My buddies were literally at the schoolyard across the street waiting for me because we were going to play some pickup baseball. And I'm like, I got to wait. And the thing went to a third ballot. And I'm like, but I have to watch this. Like, it's weird and lovable, I hope, at the same time. Kitchener-Conestoga is a riding I'm extremely interested in this particular election here in our community, because we know all the noise and we know all the frustration, but will we see a different result when the ballots are counted tonight? I'm super curious about that. I'm pretty curious, too, about 2 other ridings locally where there's a Conservative candidate in name only. They don't even live anywhere near the riding that they're hoping to represent. And anyway, those are some of the interesting things for me in this election locally. Back to the phones. Tom, good afternoon.
Yeah, hi. I hope Trudeau doesn't make any more deals with Ukraine. We should get our money back and stay out of it. I mean, isn't
You don't think we have any obligation to them?
No, we don't.
No? Okay.
They started it.
Ukraine started it?
Yeah.
How did Ukraine start it? They got invaded.
Like nobody, because the media is a total idiot. All he wanted was he doesn't want NATO in his backyard, and that was the only problem. Now, all the Europeans and Biden, they set him up.
Just so I'm understanding then, Tom, because Volodymyr Zelensky and Ukraine applied to join NATO, it's their fault for being invaded. Yeah, but hang on. I just want to be
qualified.
Right, but I just want to hang on, Paul. I just want to be Tom. I just want to be clear on this because they applied to join NATO and Russia. Like that's grounds for invasion.
Well, you've surrounded Russia with all the NATO nations, and he said no, and NATO didn't entertain him they refused him in because they didn't qualify because they're the most corrupt country. So
Russia is or Ukraine is?
Russia, but they didn't.
Wait,
so
Tom, I'm losing you. Who's the most corrupt country, Russia or Ukraine?
Ukraine.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was clear. I apologize. There's a lot of interrupting there, I know, but I find that really interesting, and it takes me back to a long ago conversation on this show about a young man. This was in the States, who committed a robbery at a fast food restaurant, I believe, and was running away, shot in the back. And the caller, and we had a pretty decent argument about it because he said, yeah, but if he hadn't robbed the store, he wouldn't have been shot. I'm like, I get it, but robbing the store shouldn't end with a result of shot in the back, right? You absolutely should pay a consequence. That's not the consequence you should pay. Applying to join NATO should not lead to invasion by neighbor. I don't think, but that's just me. And I love it, by the way. One of my favorite things in the world is when you call up and talk about the media idiots. Those like that. If you want to try to endear yourself to me, keep up that happy crappy. Why don't you? Brenda, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I split my head when I was 18 on the edge of a dock. We were at the family's cottage, and on Sunday afternoons, all my cousins and us would have a few cocktails and decide to go out water skiing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, when they came all back in one by one, they dropped a ski and came surfing into the dock. Well, I can do that. If that looks really easy. Well, I did drop a ski, but I went flying face forward, and my forehead caught the edge of the dock, and they had to call an ambulance.
I'm not surprised.
Everybody was too inebriated to drive me to the hospital, and when I got to the hospital, they wouldn't give me any painkillers because my blood alcohol level was too high.
Uh-huh.
But I never dropped a ski again after that.
Lesson learned by Brenda. I love it. Thanks for the call. Dave, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I spent the night at a well-known, popular hotel chain. And there was this big sign, huge letters, saying, "Be very careful stepping out of the tub." And I didn't pay attention. I turned around and rested for a half hour before I had to go out. And then I decided to take a shower, but it just flew over my head. I stepped into the shower, and when I finished, I stepped out of the tub. And down I went, and I twisted my ankle fierce. I had to go to one of those clinics to get my ankle looked after.
Did you sue that hotel chain, Dave?
No way. I was
Good man.
embarrassed.
Good man. You know what? Listen, they had the sign up. You're responsible. Be careful when you step out of the tub. I'm sorry that you injured yourself, though. Kind of sucks. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a busy show for busy people, and we know you're busy today, particularly busy because it's voting day. Maybe you already cast your ballot. Maybe you still will before 9 tonight. But we know you're going to do it. Right back to the phones on our Talkback Hour. Bob, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, I got a little story for you.
Bob, you have a terrible phone, though, and I don't know how well the story is going to translate unless you can make that phone sound better for me.
I just took you out of speaker. Does that help?
No, it's really not. It honestly sounds like you're swimming underwater. You have something in the background that you need to turn down, Bob.
Okay, hang on.
I just heard myself. Bob calls so regularly, he should know this by now, shouldn't he?
Yeah, it was gone.
Okay, no, Bob, you know what, Bob? Bob, I'm so sorry. You got to fix that. Bob should know better. He's such a long-time regular caller. Please, please, please turn down your radio or your TV in the background and then hold that handset as close to your little lips as you possibly can so we can hear you clearly and you can make your point succinctly. I love it, okay? Tom, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Okay, I just heard the other Tom's comment about it was Ukraine's fault.
That was his argument. Yeah.
So I'm just trying. I'm not a very well educated person here, but so when Hitler decided he wanted to go across Europe, and the rest of the Allies decided to declare war on Hitler or in Germany, was it the Allies' fault or was it Hitler's fault?
It's an excellent question.
You know, like who threw the first? Sometimes it doesn't matter who threw the first punch, but there is a point where who's done more damage here. So I don't understand that rationale because we could just like you said, okay, well the person hadn't robbed the bank, he wouldn't have gotten shot. Well, maybe he shouldn't have robbed the bank. First of all, I don't know, but hey, I just don't understand that. Ukraine was the aggressor here. Okay, all right, well. That says a lot to me. All right. Have a great day, Mike.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the call. And again, to go back to the other story that Tom just related, yes, you absolutely shouldn't have robbed the bank or this. It was a restaurant, I believe, the story I was relating. You shouldn't have done that. There is a consequence for that. But what happened in the case that I was relating was that the person who robbed the store or the restaurant was shot in the back while being pursued by police. That's not the consequence here. So, yeah, you wouldn't have been in that problem if you had not robbed the restaurant in the first place, but that cannot possibly, under any circumstances, be the outcome. Same as Ukraine. Yeah, they applied to be a part of NATO, and that surrounds Russia with NATO countries. That doesn't mean you get invaded. That shouldn't be the end result here. Anyway, okay, I think Bob's got everything fixed at the Bob household. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Mike. Sorry, I was gone, so I left the radio on.
Yeah, you got it. You know better than this. I know you do. So please, from now on, just like this is awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, years ago, my mom was moving out of the house, right? After my dad was dead for about 10 years. So I was helping her clean out. And me and a buddy were taking stuff out of the garage. And my dad had a stack of wood in the corner.
A stack of wood, sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I stepped on something on the floor, and it fell, and it hit the stack of wood. And a couple of the boards had nails in them.
Oh, boy.
So I had a piece of wood stuck in my head, but not very deep.
Bob, don't leave the punchline for me.
So I went to the hospital, right?
Right.
And the nurse said, do you want to tell me what happened? And I said, not really. And she goes, why? I said, do you remember a TV show called Home Improvement? And she goes, yeah. I said, well, it sounds like an episode on Home Improvement.
Yeah, it sure does. You step on something that causes the wood to fall. The wood has some nails. Next thing you know, it's stuck in your head. Greg, good afternoon.
Hey, just same Greg again. Just another Flipside sort of story. This one didn't result in an injury, but have you ever been to Bellwood Lake?
Oh, of course. Great butter tarts there.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, that's at the far end. That's down in Bellwood. But can you picture the other end, the Shan Dam?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, we had a cottage there for 40 years, and we were at that end of things. Anyhow, I used to have friends up, like this is back when 10, 12, whatever, before days of working in the summer. Anyhow, like along the dam, there's a train track so you can go along. So anyway, you'd be able to cross the dam. So we were biking over there, me and the one friend that I had up, and then, well, of course, it's seagull territory up there, so there's tons of them, usually like a flock together. And so we went by, and then all of a sudden something startled them. They all flew, and one of them dropped one right on my friend's shoulder.
That's good luck. It's very good luck, Gary, or Greg.
Well, it caused him to wipe out on the bike because it startled him. It didn't hurt. It just wasn't expecting all of a sudden, a plop on the shoulder. So it's like startled him. He wiped out. No injuries done, but it just the humor. I was definitely laughing at him, and glad it was him and not me. And so it's like I say, no harm done in this one, but still kind of Flipside-ish.
I hear where you're coming from, and that is not something you hear every day. A bird pooped on me, and then I crashed my bicycle. Gary, good afternoon.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
I just got back from voting.
Good man. How did it go?
Not good.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I didn't get a voting card, and I never, ever heard of all the advertisements, anything about looking it up on .org. I didn't really know you needed a computer to vote.
You don't need a computer to vote. You just need a piece of ID, go to your polling station, you're good to go.
Yeah, but how do you know where your polling station is?
Well, Gary, surely there's one in the neighborhood, isn't there?
3.
Okay.
But I went to
the wrong one.
And the third one last.
Okay.
Yeah, and why would they have an election so fast that the post office can't deliver it? They should be on their high because they just got $1 billion.
Well, they
I didn't. That's why. So what's going to come on the news is all these people didn't vote. Well, I went to 3 places and I asked approximately 10 people at the Stanley Park Mall, where I live is in Stanley Park, where to vote, and they didn't know. And finally, somebody told me St. Anne's Church.
Yeah.
I went there, and they said, "Oh no, your address. You got to go to the school down the street."
Franklin.
No,
Crestview
down the street.
Okay. Anyway, sorry. So
Yeah.
did you get to cast your ballot?
Yes.
But it was more trouble than it should have been, wasn't it?
Well, it's what I
Of course.
If that's the way they're operating it, that you have to have a computer and you got to know what address to look it up.
Yeah.
It was never advertised on TV.
Yeah.
It can bring nothing more than a corrupt election.
Gary, listen, I hear you. I'll hesitate on the word corrupt because we've gone through this before where elections were rigged or this or that. But your point is spot on. This is something that really does require some systemic change, and everybody had best buy into it. I'm not so sure about the ability to call a snap election. I think the mandatory minimum number of days for a campaign has to be lengthened. There have to be more for the minimum number, because that's what we're in, right? We were 5 weeks or so. We need to make that longer so that there is enough time to get voter cards in the mail, all of those different things. And I'm going to share with you again something I shared yesterday, kind of popped into my head. There should be a mandatory minimum spend by every party. Parties can spend this money on advertising for the election. Mandatory. And you have to go across all media. I want radio, I want newspaper, I want TV. You can have your digital. I want something in Canada Post, so it comes to my mailbox. Because, as Gary says, not everybody uses a computer. You shouldn't have to have a computer just to find out where the hell you're voting. Mandatory minimum spend and a longer period for the minimum election campaign. Come on with your coming on. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We've had some fun today sharing the strange ways we have injured ourselves. And I just want to go back to this list that was compiled, analyzing the records of over 9 billion health insurance claims. Among the injuries reported to doctors, more than 17,000 patients walked into a wall. 25,000 walked into a piece of furniture. 400 walked into a lamp post. 3,400 came, quote, in contact with a powered lawnmower. 300 were bitten by a pig. 10,000 people were, quote, accidentally bitten by another person. 1,700 struck by a cow. You can't make this stuff up. Make sure you cast your ballot today. It's Election Day in Ontario.